I'd been covering national politics for some time as well as doing what I was doing out there. And I knew the Nixon crowd because most of them came from California.
Tom Brokaw is 86 years old. He spent more than 50 years at NBC, reporting on historic moments such as the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, and the September 11th attacks. Today, he watches from a distance as Savannah Guthrie, a fellow journalist from the same network, faces one of the most difficult periods of her life. Brokaw and Guthrie share more than just a workplace connection at NBC. What Brokaw has said publicly about Guthrie over the years offers insight into her character and her current situation. It reflects not only who Savannah is as a journalist, but also who she is as a daughter and as a human being carrying immense pressure. This story is about more than a missing grandmother. It touches on legacy, courage, and the responsibility that comes with the roles they hold. To be clear from the start, this channel focuses on honesty. Tom Brokaw has not given a formal interview about the case involving Nancy Guthrie. These days, he keeps a lower profile, living quietly on his ranch in Montana. However, his past comments about NBC, The Today Show, and the responsibility of journalists during difficult moments help us understand what he might feel as he watches Savannah searching for her 84-year-old mother. By looking at Brokaw's life, legacy, and his deep connection with NBC, we can see a kind of tribute to Savannah and a reminder of what true journalism looks like when someone is under extraordinary stress. The chair he left and the woman who filled it. To understand why Tom Brokaw's perspective on Savannah Guthrie matters, we first need to understand what that famous studio chair truly represents. In 1976, Tom Brokaw became co-host of The Today Show alongside Jane Pauley. For 5 years, he was the face of NBC's morning programming. But Brokaw did far more than read from a script. He covered presidential primaries, reported breaking news, and built one of the most respected careers in American broadcast journalism. In 1981, he left The Today Show to anchor NBC Nightly News. What he left behind was something powerful, a blueprint for what a serious journalist could represent on a morning show. He proved that a morning host didn't have to be just a personality or performer. A host could be a journalist, someone delivering real, meaningful reporting at the start of the day. Fast forward to 2012. Savannah Guthrie, a lawyer, White House correspondent, and chief legal analyst, stepped into that same co-anchor role. She didn't just take the seat, she elevated it. Guthrie graduated magna cum laude from Georgetown University Law Center and placed first in the Arizona bar exam. She spent years covering the White House, interviewing presidents, and delivering major legal stories across NBC before taking one of the most watched positions in television. Brokaw, who has often praised the evolution of talent at NBC, would likely see in Guthrie the very standard he once set. The idea that morning television doesn't have to be lightweight, that the person speaking at 7 a.m. can be just as serious, informed, and prepared as the anchor delivering the evening news. In many ways, Savannah Guthrie carries forward the legacy that Tom Brokaw helped build. What Brokaw has said about journalists facing personal crisis. Tom Brokaw understands what it means to face unimaginable circumstances under public scrutiny. In 2013, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a form of blood cancer. He revealed this publicly in 2014, shortly after Barack Obama awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Rather than focus on self-pity, Brokaw spoke about perspective, how journalism, especially witnessing the suffering of others, builds resilience. He has often said that reporting on wars, disasters, and tragedy teaches journalists one key truth. Suffering is universal. It doesn't discriminate. And sometimes, those who tell the stories become part of one. The words of Savannah Guthrie since her mother Nancy Guthrie disappeared from Tucson, Arizona on January 31, 2026 reflect that same understanding. Standing before cameras, not as a journalist, but as a daughter, Savannah spoke with visible emotion. She described her mother as kind, faithful, loyal, and fiercely loving. Looking directly into the camera, she used the only tool she knew, her voice, to reach anyone who might help. Brokaw once described journalism as the sacred act of making the abstract human. And in that moment, Savannah Guthrie wasn't performing. She was telling the most important story of her life. The NBC family and what loyalty looks like. Tom Brokaw has long spoken about the NBC family as something real, not just a corporate phrase, but a bond built over decades. When Tim Russer died suddenly in 2008, Brokaw returned to the anchor desk at NBC, visibly emotional, to share the news. He didn't do it out of obligation, but because it was the right thing to do. That's what family means. More recently, when Nancy Guthrie disappeared, Hoda Kotb returned to the Today show to support her friend Savannah Guthrie while she searched for her mother. Inside Studio 1A, the team placed yellow roses around the set. They wore ribbons in solidarity, and Dylan Dreyer led a prayer for Savannah and her family. When Savannah finally returned to New York City after more than a month away, she walked back into Studio 1A to find her colleagues waiting for her. It was a moment that perfectly reflected what Tom Brokaw always meant when he spoke about the NBC family. They stood together in a circle, hands clasped, praying and offering quiet support. Savannah Guthrie told them, "I want you to know I'm still standing, I still have hope, and I'm still me." The team at NBC stood firmly by her, without hesitation. In moments of deep pain, that kind of unity means everything. It's the sort of support that would have meant a great deal to Tom Brokaw, who spent 55 years helping build not just the network, but the culture behind it. Watching the Today Show family come together like that would have resonated deeply with him. The greatest generation and what Nancy Guthrie represents. Tom Brokaw authored one of the most celebrated nonfiction works in American publishing, The Greatest Generation, released in 1998. The book pays tribute to those who lived through the Great Depression and served during World War II, people shaped not by what they wanted, but by what they endured. Nancy Guthrie, born in 1941, belongs to that very generation. After the loss of her husband, Charles Guthrie, she raised 3 children largely on her own. As a single mother, she built a life rooted in resilience, faith, and dedication, raising a daughter who would go on to become a leading voice in broadcast journalism. She attended church regularly, cared deeply for her family, and lived a life centered on service and support. Her children describe her as kind, faithful, loyal, and fiercely loving, a woman full of warmth and light. This story, in many ways, reflects the legacy of that greatest generation. When someone like Nancy, vulnerable, yet deeply strong, is taken under such disturbing circumstances, the contrast between her life and the act itself becomes deeply unsettling. For Brokaw, who built his legacy honoring people like her, this moment would carry profound emotional weight. The weight of the world and how Savannah Guthrie has carried it. Every journalist eventually faces a defining moment, one that tests everything they know and believe. For Savannah Guthrie, that moment came on February 1st, 2026, when her mother was reported missing from her home in Tucson, Arizona. Within days, she began releasing public video messages. Standing beside her siblings, she spoke directly into the camera, addressing whoever had taken her mother. Despite the heartbreak, she remained composed, using her voice for one purpose: bringing her mother home. In the first 9 days, she released 4 messages, each carefully shaped with guidance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In one, she said, "We received your message. We beg you to return our mother." She even added, "We will pay," holding on to hope that her mother was still alive. As time passed, her tone shifted. The hope remained, but it was weighed down by uncertainty. She acknowledged the possibility that her mother might no longer be alive, yet still pleaded for answers. "We need her to come home." For any journalist, including someone like Tom Brokaw, those moments reflect extraordinary courage. Facing the camera not as a reporter, but as a daughter, requires a different kind of strength. When Savannah later returned to Today Show's Studio 1A, she wasn't there to broadcast. She simply wanted to reconnect. Quietly, she told her colleagues, "I still believe, and as my mom would say, where else would I go?" That quiet resilience, the ability to stand firm under immense pressure, is exactly the quality Brokaw has long admired in both journalists and people. The investigation, what we know and why it matters. The details of the case help explain why it has captured such widespread attention. Nancy Guthrie, now 84, was taken from her home in the early hours of February 1st. Bloodstains found at the scene were confirmed to be hers. Surveillance footage reviewed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation shows a masked individual, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, approaching the house. He tampered with the doorbell camera, blocking it with a plant, before entering. He carried a black Ozark Trail backpack, a product sold through Walmart, and may have had a marking or tattoo on his right wrist. Investigators believe the crime was carefully planned. Experts suggest the suspect likely researched surveillance systems and practiced his approach. A walkie-talkie seen in the footage indicates he may not have acted alone. Following the incident, ransom messages demanding up to $6 million in cryptocurrency were sent. At least one of these was later confirmed to be fraudulent. As of early March 2026, the FBI-led task force has processed thousands of tips, reviewed extensive surveillance footage, and analyzed vast amounts of data. Crucially, DNA found at the scene does not match Nancy or her immediate family, offering a potentially significant lead. This is more than an investigation. It's a story about resilience, legacy, and the strength to keep going, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. Retired Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, described the case as red hot, meaning the investigation remains highly active and far from forgotten. At the same time, Chris Nanos, the sheriff of Pima County, has publicly stated that he still believes Nancy Guthrie could be alive. The reward for information has continued to grow, now exceeding $1.2 million. This includes a $1 million personal offer from Savannah Guthrie and her siblings, $100,000 from the FBI, and additional contributions from 88 Crime, a group that supports investigations like this one. What legacy looks like: Brokaw, Guthrie, and the torch. For decades, Tom Brokaw has stressed a simple but powerful idea. Journalism is not just a job. For those who truly believe in it, it becomes a calling. Those who embrace that calling carry a responsibility to witness events and tell stories in a way that shapes how the world understands them. Brokaw joined the Today Show in 1976 and later became the anchor of NBC Nightly News in 1981. Over the years, he reported from defining moments such as the fall of the Berlin Wall and led coverage during the September 11th attacks. After being diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2013, he eventually retired in 2021 after 55 years with NBC, the only journalist to have hosted all 3 of its major news programs. Throughout his career, Brokaw reminded younger reporters of one key principle: the story is never about the journalist. It's about the people living through it. Savannah Guthrie understands that deeply. She learned it through law school, her time covering the White House, and years behind the anchor desk. But since her mother's disappearance, she has lived that principle in the most personal way imaginable. She is not just reporting a story, she is living it. At the same time, she has used her platform to keep attention on Nancy Guthrie, ensuring the case does not fade from public view. In his book, The Greatest Generation, Brokaw wrote that true strength is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. That generation carried its burdens and kept moving forward, refusing to surrender to circumstances beyond their control. On March 5, 2026, Savannah returned to Studio 1A at the Today Show. Looking at the colleagues who stood by her, she said simply, "I'm still standing." In many ways, that moment defines her legacy. And at 86, Tom Brokaw would likely recognize both the cost of that strength and exactly what it represents.